Hey you, and welcome back to Let's Play Kerbal Space Program. My name is Satchmo, this is episode 24. Today I'm looking at the missions, and I'm seeing that we have a mission about to expire here. The one to build a Duna space station, and the one to gather some scientific, crew reports from Ike. And so those two are part of what we're working on today. I guess we'll see a little bit more about what actually happens to those later. But I think the main mission is to send the rover that we built last episode to Duna, and to send the ferry that's actually going to grab the fuel from the rover and bring it back to the DSS. We're going to land that there too, and actually try to perform that one time to see if it works. And the last thing is to give the pilots a way home, because as it is right now, we have a whole bunch of Kerbals on the DSS, including 3 of our top pilots, and it's time for them to come home. The scientists can stay, because that's going to be their job. At any rate, so here I am sticking those 3 components on. I have the ferry that I pre-built, the rover that I pre-built, and on top I have the return vessel. And so here I am building the fairing that's going to go around all that. I had to go back to R&D here and grab the bigger fairing, because those wheels wouldn't fit inside. Anyway, I'm going to kind of enrobe the whole thing in a big fairing, and which takes me a little while to get. You'll see here I had to go back and kind of try it several times to get this fairing on there just right. But at any rate, we're sending all of that up at one time on one big-ass rocket. So, yeah, very cool mission. High risk, high reward kind of thing. We had varying degrees of success on this mission. It wasn't... it ultimately was a complete success, and I'm very proud of it. But let's put it this way: it took me 4.5 hours to get this 29 minutes of footage that I'm about to show you. It just took a long time to do, and it was kind of a very stressful experience. Part of that you'll see here momentarily. Anyway, there we go. I finally got the fairing how I liked it, and I'm just expanding. I realized there that I didn't put an inner stage on, which would have been disastrous. So I went ahead and I'm looking right now to see what would be the best engine to put on there. I determined that maybe a little extra fuel on that stage would be the best thing. Of course, now I've messed up my fairing. You see that I have the wheels there sticking through, so I had to redo the fairing over and over again. But eventually I do get it looking okay. As silly as it looks to be that wide at the bottom there, but whatever. Today, just like yesterday, we're going to be using 3 of those Rockomax core, the really, really big cores, and the Mammoth engines. I think last episode I said Rhino engines. They're not the Rhino. I haven't used the Rhino yet. These, if I'm not mistaken, are the Mammoth engines. Not that really matters, but I will correct myself if I notice that I need to. So here I am, of course, just checking the staging, making sure that everything's okay. I am, in essence, doing 3 missions at once here, so it is important to get it right the first time. I want to do more live videos this week, and a little bit of last week I've had to do all these voiceover videos, and frankly, I don't care for doing them. I'm having fun. I had a good time doing this, and it is kind of nice just to be able to play the game kind of in silence and listen to some music and everything without having to talk during it. That is kind of nice. But I could do that on my own time. The reason I did Let's Play was to provide the real-time commentary and to engage with the audience. So it's a little upsetting that I haven't had the time to do the videos that I want to do the way that I want to do them. And that instead, here it is almost midnight, and I'm recording voiceovers. That's just kind of the fact of it. I appreciate, if you're watching this, appreciate you sticking through. If you don't care for it, that is. If you do care for it, then, well, there you go. Nice little treat for you. I personally would rather it the other way, so I'm going to try to work on finding more time to do that. At any rate, here we are launching, and you see that I have a splendid launch. It looked a little bit like it was going to roll over there, but it was totally fine. I did wind up putting 6 kickbacks on the side. I was going to say, yeah, mostly for the Delta V. The Mammoths had enough thrust to weight as it was. So if you look very carefully during that, I know this is sped up, but if you look very carefully, I was actually throttling back because I had a little bit too much thrust to weight with the kickbacks on. Really, they were just there to kind of help get me out of the atmosphere as fast as possible. That way I have a little bit more Delta V. Because a lot of the Delta V that's on this thing isn't actually for the Kerbin to Duna leg of the mission. It's for the other parts of the trip. So I had to kind of mentally subtract out some of the Delta V that was being displayed, because it was inaccurate to how much Delta V I could actually use. At any rate, you notice I'm not actually talking about what I'm doing here, because I've been circularizing and setting up a maneuver, and this is all stuff that we've seen 1,000 times before, so I'm going to talk about something else instead. Here you'll see that I'm getting a moon intercept. It's pretty frustrating, but it does happen sometimes. So what I'd spend a little bit of time here kind of wiggling things around and seeing if I can find some combination of vectors that'll get me around the moon and still intercept Duna. And unfortunately I can't. The ejection angle is just the ejection angle. And if there's a moon in a way, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. Maybe there was some way for me to maybe get a little closer to the moon and use the moon as a slingshot and still have that same ejection angle. But I didn't spend enough time to figure out if that was the case. So instead, what you see I'm doing here is I'm just slinging out behind the moon. I think it was behind. Kind of missing the moon's SOI altogether. And then once I leave Kerbin's sphere of influence, I go ahead and perform another maneuver that's actually going to intercept Duna for me. The downside to this is that I wound up spinning, an extra 180 something Delta V, meters a second worth of Delta V to intercept Duna that I didn't need to. If you were on tight margins and you were doing this and you get intercept with the moon, again, if the margins are really tight, you might not want to do what I did. You might want to instead just orbit the planet a couple more times and let the moon kind of move out of the way. Look at the space hot dog I got going on here. I will definitely can't stop laughing at it. It's so silly looking. I will definitely be strutting that up better in the future. I know I said that last episode, so I guess you have no reason to believe me, but yeah, I'll definitely be working on that in the future to try to avoid the space hot dog. At any rate, once he decouples, it's a shorter craft, and there are fewer junctions, and you don't have to worry about that so much. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, just orbit the planet a couple more times, let the moon kind of move out of the way, and then go ahead, because the ejection angle isn't going to change that much over the course of a few days, because really the ejection angle is based off of the relative positions of the two planets. And of course, the relative position of the two planets is changing much more slowly than the relative position of Kerbin and its moon. The moon is orbiting a lot faster than Duna is orbiting around Kerb. Well, it's not orbiting Kerbin, but you get the idea. It's in its orbit in a different position with respect to Kerbin. So yeah, if you run into that problem, you can just wait a little while and let the moon move out of the way. If again Delta V is that much of an issue for you, it may not be. So here we are. I decided to do my normal burn in the SOI of Duna. I really don't remember why I did that. Oh, I think it was because it was kind of tricky for me to do it out somewhere else. I just decided it wasn't that big a deal, so I went to Kerbin and did that. To Duna and did that. And so here we are finally at Kerbin, only 8 minutes into the video, and we're going to. I retracted my solar panels and my my relay, my antenna. It is important that I do have a kind of natural antenna in those command pods that is allowing me to still pilot this thing. I think I have comm access to the DSS. We happen to be on the same side of the planet right now, so that's fine. You may also be noticing at different times in the video that there are other things in the sky, and that's because in between episodes I sent up a couple extra satellites, and just so I can get a little bit more network coverage, but it was more of the same that you've already seen, so I didn't think that anybody needed to actually see that. At any rate, here I'm decreasing my periapsis to 100 kilometers, which is what DSS is, and then now I'm just changing my apoapsis. And instead of matching orbits, what I'm doing here is I'm just going to decrease my apoapsis until I get that close approach, which you see I managed to. So I am going to have a highly eccentric orbit, but it is going to make me match up to the space station. At any rate, I put a cut in there because it was just a lot of waiting. I did manage to get a nice approach with the space station, so I killed my relative velocity and I decoupled the first element here, which is the return vessel for the Kerbins. So all I'm going to do, I don't have a docking port on this or anything else. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go over there by the crew modules and kind of just park it next to the space station. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm kind of shooting past it to get myself in a kind of orientation with it. And then I'm going to pretend to dock with it. I'm going to perform all the docking maneuvers. But all I'm really going to do is I'm just going to bump into that docking port there and kind of park my ship up next to it. And then I will EVA all of the Kerbals, and they will fly into that ship. So there we go, donk, right into it. And then I switch over and just hop them out and fly them around. I happen to love flying on these jetpacks. I think that's actually a lot of fun. There we go. Number 2, I think that was Val, or Wilney. Who is this? No, this is Wilney. I can't get them straight. At any rate, there they are. And they are all in. So now we're switching back to the other craft. So we have the 2, right? We have the Ferry and the Rover. So here is the Ferry. And we're just going to kind of eject him. And we're going to mate him with the space station. And we set him up without any fuel in him. So all he's working on right now is monopropellant. So I could save a little bit of fuel on the way up, because I knew that the space station had fuel in it. So so I didn't bring any fuel. So all I'm using is the monopropellant here to actually dock, and I'm going to take some of the fuel from the space station and use that in my trip down to Duna surface here a little bit later. So yeah, normal docking stuff here. I'm kind of just maneuvering myself, getting a little closer, and I don't know what happened there. I don't want to call it a glitch. I should have slowed down the video so you could see it in greater detail. But as soon as I got close to the docking port, the 2 vessels just like flung away from each other, and my velocity was down to like less than a meter a second. It was incredibly slow, but the 2 craft just doinked and flew apart. So yeah, kind of completely messed up a lot of what I was trying to do. I haven't had that happen before. Again, I don't really want to call it a glitch, but it sure felt like a glitch to me, because I didn't do anything that I don't normally do. Yet the result was significantly different. At any rate, here we are. We're flipping the 2 craft, pointing at each other, and just going to perform the docking again. And if I'm not mistaken, this one goes a lot smoother. Something really beautiful about the two vessels coming in and mating like that. I love to watch that. So here we go. I'm going to orient the space station back in the orientation that I like, and I'm going to steal some fuel from the space station, so that way I can fly down to the surface. Likewise, I'm going to point the return vessel normal. You saw that. And now all I'm going to do is deorbit the Rover. So just going back and forth between these missions as fast as possible. So we got the Kerbins in the thing ready to go home. We've got the lander attached to the space station ready to land. And now we are changing the orbit of the Rover to land near that the landing site. So you see right there on the map, kind of the center middle of Duna is where I have Duna Base. So here I am decreasing my orbit. I'm sorry, well, what do you call that? My angle, why can't I think of what that thing's called? Well, at any rate, I'm going lower on the planet. I'm not going up toward it, I'm going below it. I'm drawing a blank on what that thing's called. And here we are. I'm just going to, we're in retrograde a little bit to get myself to land as close as I can. It turns out I didn't get as close as I should have. I guess I thought this planet was smaller than it was. Here we are, decoupling the extra fuel, and then I'm trying to kind of balance fuel between those 2 tanks over there, so I don't have, so I can kind of use it as a ballast, so that I land horizontally. But a lot of this is going to be done with the parachutes. Now, I would like to have been able to increase the altitude that those parachutes deploy, but at the same time, but I didn't. So at any rate, here we are using the parachutes, and there we go. It didn't look that great sped up, but in real life, and it wasn't a bad landing. So there we go. Zoom out and select the other guy as my target. Deploy my my solar panels and drive. Just getting my wheels all configured to make sure that all that is set up, and of course quick saving. And what you notice is I'm like 33 kilometers away from Duna Base, and so I'm cutting out a lot of footage here. I'm going to show you this now so you can see that I did just drive the whole way there. But let me tell you, this took half an hour, 40 minutes. I think it might have taken about 40 minutes for me to drive all the way over there. So 33 kilometers in this buggy is a lot slower than you think. or is a lot further than you think, rather. Because I had to drive all the way over there. So anyway, I eventually wisened up and started using time warp. Because you can time warp kind of within reason and speed it up. However, if you do time warp all the way, I did have problems a couple times where the thing would just like randomly explode or flip out, and that was no good. So there was some quick saving involved with this. But yeah, anyway, here is me just driving across the Duna surface towards the Duna base. It does drive really well. I didn't have much of a problem with it in terms of the driving. It's got a nice wide wheelbase, which was important, and it steers well. The speed leaves a little to be desired. You see there it's 18, 17 meters a second, kind of going uphill. It's not great. I did put that little engine on the bottom. I don't think I mentioned that. In fact, I didn't, so I'll mention it now. There's a little Werner engine attached to the bottom of the Rover. If I think about it, maybe I'll mention it next time. I'll show you. But I did attach a Werner engine to the bottom of the Rover, and that serves, in my mind, two purposes. One, if I ever need to climb a hill and just don't quite have enough oomph to get over the hill, I have this little engine with me that might be able to propel me upward. There's the edit for me getting a little closer. And the second thing is, I was worried that I would be bogged down by all the fuel, and you can't jettison fuel in this game. Like, you can't just like dump fuel. So to me, having this Werner engine, which isn't strong enough to push the vehicle if the brakes are on, to me that was a way I could just turn the brakes on, turn on the engine, and just burn off the fuel that way. So for me, it was like a little valve I could use to dump fuel if, for whatever reason, I needed to. So if you kind of look very carefully, you can see down towards the bottom front of that ship, I do have a Werner engine attached to the bottom, and that is why. And it wasn't part of the build process, I installed it afterwards. At any rate, I had a successful mating with the base. So now we have, the base is pumping fuel. Right now it's mining ore, and it has completely filled up all of its tanks and the tanks of the Rover as well. So all I'm going to do is decouple it and kind of drive it and park it over here. Excuse me. And we're back to DSS. So I've decided about how much fuel that I want, and how much fuel I want, and I have what was I going to say? Decoupled, and now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the Rover, except with the ferry, the fuel ferry. Now here you'll notice I actually make a mistake. For some reason in my mind I was thinking that if I dipped my orientation down right there, then I would like the planet would rotate and then I'd be on the light side. But no, the way I had it is that I would always be landing on the dark side of the planet. So you see me here reverse my angle on the planet to be able to land on the day side of the planet. So that's what I did there. At any rate, pull in all of the solar panels. I'm not going to tell you that I did this the first time. This is actually, I think, my third attempt. The other attempts were successful, but they weren't really very close to the Rover. And after seeing how slow the Rover drove, I thought it was imperative for me to at least get reasonably close. Unfortunately, as soon as I deployed the landing gear, the whole thing like flipped over, which is interesting. I guess the landing gear provided some kind of like sail type effect. But at any rate, the thing became kind of harmonically imbalanced and flipped over. So, but anyway, once the parachute's deployed, it was totally fine. So, just as before, I do get it was a little wobbly there for some reason. You see, I'm kind of like babying the time warp, because now it's fine. But for a second there, every time it was like glitching against the ground. I don't know how to describe it. I guess if I had slowed down, you could see it was like shaking as I was driving. So I'd stop and then I would go, and then I would stop and then I would go, but it kept shaking. And then now it's smoothed out, so it's not happening. But for a minute there, it was kind of flipping out, and I really didn't want to lose this Rover. At any rate, I did kind of bump into it a little hard there, but with a little bit of working, I managed to dock the Rover and feed it all the fuel that I had gotten from the Duna base. So that's what I'm doing here. Just transferring all that Duna base fuel into the Duna Ferry. And then all I did here was, of course, just drive it back, couple up with the Duna base, and then fill it back up with fuel again. And I'm back to having a completely filled up Duna base with all the ore and fuel and monopropellant that I would need. Something I am noticing, though, is that I completely forgot to put a monopropellant tank on the Rover. So even though I am producing monopropellant and I am storing monopropellant in the Duna base, I do not have a way to give that monopropellant to anybody. So that's pretty frustrating. So the functionality of the Duna base is not as planned. So yeah, that is a little upsetting. But it is what it is. I am still trying to think of solutions to that problem. However, I have not come up with one yet. So here I am, I come up and get myself kind of out of orbit, and then I'm setting up a real nifty maneuver here. What I'm doing with this maneuver is I'm changing my inclination. That was it. The word just came to me naturally now, but the word I was thinking of earlier was inclination. I'm doing a maneuver that's not only circularizing, but also changing my inclination, and also giving me an intercept with the DSS. So here in one burn, I should be able to do, I should be able to go from being on the ground to docking with the DSS in pretty much just one maneuver. So that's kind of nice. Yep, and that's all there is to it. So then I just fly around to the side of the planet. Zoop. And there we are. Now this part of the video is interesting because I had a hell of a time docking with this thing, and I have no idea why. It was just very, very difficult for me to dock with this. And at this point, you've seen me dock these vessels, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, 3,000 times, I don't know. So, I mean, I'm capable of doing this, but this time right here, I just had the hardest time. A lot of it, I think, was down to the fact that if I control from that docking port, which is what I am doing, so that I can make them two vessels face each other, I don't have, because I don't have a pilot on board, I can't hold a stability assist on. So like CC right here, even though I'm pointing at the docking port, I'm at an angle to it instead of being parallel to it. And so that's no good. So you can kind of correct that with your own craft. It's obviously a little tricky. The easy way to do it is to point for you to point at it and for it to point at you, and then you know that you're aligned properly. But you can do it with only one craft. The other thing is that, of course, every time I came in and bumped into it, it started rotating. So then I had to go back and forth and point them at each other. And while I'm trying to point them at each other, they're moving with relation to each other. So you see right here, this is a very tricky docking procedure. Considered editing all this out because it's not flattering. But it is, I think, probably important to see kind of what I had to go through here and kind of how I chose to solve it. I mentioned in the last video how little I use visuals when I'm doing this. You see here I'm just backing out as far as I could, and I accidentally for some reason I think I wanted to switch vehicles and instinctively press quick save and then reloaded. So I didn't actually. There was nothing that happened in the interim there. There was a complete waste of a quick save, but my fingers just did it instinctively. I don't normally use visuals when I'm docking. I mentioned that last time, and here I have to because you don't have to use visuals if the two craft are facing each other. But when they're not facing each other, you really have to make sure that you're kind of aligned with it. So at any rate, after a little bit of working, I do manage to get it docked and fill up with fuel. So at this point, we can talk about those mission contracts that we had, and also we can take a nice little gander at our space station, which I'm pretty proud of at this point. I do a couple of things here. I try to level up the crew and do some science and whatnot, or actually don't do any science. I try to, but I don't have any science on board. That'll be something that I'll actually do later on. And I decided at this point that I'll just do it on camera and kind of explain the process. Although I am sick of being a Duna at this point. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, the mission. So unfortunately, I was not able to complete the Build the Duna Space Station mission because I didn't have 6,000 units of liquid fuel in the space station at one time. I was hoping this Duna Ferry would actually be able to get more fuel to the space station in one go, but unfortunately, because of how low the thrust to weight is, it burns a lot of fuel. It has plenty of Delta V, but it does burn a significant amount of its fuel on the way up to the space station. So unless I can find a way to save some of that fuel on the landing, so I don't have to spend as much when I actually go back down and land, it's going to be tricky for me to actually be able to bring a significant amount of fuel to the DSS. I might have to take several passes, and that's just time on my part. So at any rate, here I am switching to I think what I called the Duna Express, and let's just set up a little maneuver to go home. And this is the easy part of the mission. It's just to here we go, just warping around and setting up an intercept with the home world. So I think I decided here that I was going to go on one side of the planet. I decided I was going to go on the other, because I'm trying to land, if at all possible, on the light side of the planet. I do, when possible, like to land during the day. I think anybody would. So here I set up a maneuver for like 43 kilometers, which is pretty steep, but this is a very light craft, and I know it can handle it. Not to mention I have plenty of fuel, so I'm able to really slow myself down. Now, I've mentioned this before. I would probably recommend to most new players that they do kind of an aero capture where you hit the atmosphere and it keeps you in the SOI, and then you make several passes around the planet to kind of gradually slow yourself down. But at this point in the playthrough, 24 episodes in, it's fine to I think to just come in hot and burn retrograde and land. And there it is, beautiful watching that thing and fast forward. I like watching it come in like that. And with all of that said, over the last several missions, we have a space station on Duna. We have a base. I was going crazy with the mouse there in excitement. Space station on Duna. We have a base on Duna. We have a rover on Duna that is able to drive around and transfer fuel between vessels. We have a vessel docked to the Duna space station, ready to go. If ever I need to go to another planet, bring crew home. I left at three. It's capable of bringing crew home, is what I'm trying to say. It's also capable of transferring fuel between vessels. It has docking ports on it, and so on and so forth. And I brought some of the Kerbals back home, some of the pilots that I needed. So all in all, a lot of work done. I think the downside to all this is that I didn't make a whole lot of money or science doing this, because these were all missions that I kind of concocted myself, and I wasn't able to complete a whole lot of missions while doing this. So with that said, I think the rest of this week we will be going back to kind of being more mission focused and raising a little bit of money for the agency, and then we'll do some more fun stuff and go to some of the other planets. But for now, I'm kind of sick of Duna, so we'll be doing something else. At any rate, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Leave me a like in the comments, and tell me what you think in the like button, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of this. Again, I don't want to do voiceovers too much longer. Hopefully tomorrow or the next day I'll be able to go back to my kind of regularly scheduled content. But at any rate, appreciate you sticking out with me. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.